Joined by fellow Patriots beat reporter Zach Cox, former Patriots linebacker, also of The Athletic and NESN, Matt Chatham. How are you guys doing today?
Wonderful! It's Super Bowl. Let's go!
Ready for the game, man. It's been a long 2 weeks.
Finally time for Super Bowl Sunday. We've been waiting a very long 2 weeks, and let's get right into the game. First of which, Patriots always do a very good job of taking away what the opposing team does best. Let's start on offense. We got into this on this week's podcast that we recorded with the Ringer's Danny Kelly. There's no obvious one weapon on the Rams that the Patriots really need to take away. Midway through the season, late in the season, we probably would have said Todd Gurley, but he hasn't been quite as good as of late. Actually got benched in the NFC Championship game for C.J. Anderson, who's been very good himself. So I still think that you kind of have to guess that Todd Gurley is going to be healthy after those last 2 weeks, so he's actually been able to rest that knee. So that would probably be my choice on the Rams offense as to who to take away.
Yeah, I kind of stick with that idea that I believe it's a theme you have to take away, not a person. One way to look at the Rams is a little bit how other teams look at the Patriots. You don't necessarily say take away Julian or take away Gronk or even take away any of the other wide receivers down the list. You take away a theme, and with the Patriots, you just can't have them eating away 8-minute drives to start games. So in other words, you need to blunt their early runs. I think it's much the same way with the Rams. It's not necessarily stop Todd Gurley. It may be CJ, it may be more of Todd. I still think Todd's far and away the more dangerous guy, and if he's at full speed and hanging on to the football, he gets the time. But in my view, you can actually wind this back a little bit to last year's Super Bowl, guys. And I know it's a different team, but I think the themes do translate here in games like this where the offenses can do a lot of things. And that's winning on first and second down in the running game. And again, it doesn't have to be Todd. It could be CJ, but most importantly, it can't be 2nd and 5. It can't be 3rd and 2. There can't be chunk plays. These aren't big plays. We're not talking about 12 and 15-yard runs. We're just talking about annoyingly long runs that keep you either on sequence or even ahead of it. There were too many easy runs in that Super Bowl year ago, and at times earlier in this season, the Steelers game would be one example. The Titans game would be a great example, where they're getting 6 and 7 and 8-yard runs against sub fronts. I really think the Patriots need to mind what the Rams do initially in that, and that may mean moving to regular defense. We've seen a lot of nickel this year. It may be a situation where, and we'll be watching it, will Danny Shelton be active? Right. Will Dietrich Wise be active? Those kind of body types to make sure that, let's put Jared Goff in 3rd and long. Let's see what he can do from that scenario.
And the Patriots have been much better at stopping teams in 3rd and long than 3rd and short, which is a pretty obvious statement. Right. But overall, I still think it's Todd Gurley in this game because we are 2 weeks removed from that game that he played down in New Orleans. The week before that, he ran for 115 yards. So it's not like he's been bad all playoffs. Right, it's not like he's been kind of a sort of a string of sort of poor performances. He was definitely very bad against the Saints in that NFC Championship game. But everything we've heard out of Rams camp this week is that he's 100%. Sean McVay said the other day that he's basically been doing everything with no limitations. Now, however much of that you want to believe is up to you, but I just think the way that he impacts the game, both on the ground and as a receiver, he's one of the best pass-catching running backs and one of the best ball rushing running backs in this league. He's really a dual threat, and he's shown that over the last 2 seasons. This guy was the Offensive Player of the Year just last year, so I think if he's healthy or even close to 100% healthy, I do think he's the guy that the Patriots really kind of have to make sure that does not beat them in this game. And
the passing game is really the big difference between Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson.
Yep.
You don't want to get Todd Gurley running down the field against Kyle Van Noy or Dante Hightower or Landon Roberts. I think that if he is healthy in this game, we could see a decent chunk of Patrick Chung or Devin McCourty covering Todd Gurley just because he is such a weapon out of the backfield.
And one more thing, looking back to those last 2 Super Bowls, like you mentioned, both the Falcons and the Eagles were able to have a lot of success throwing the ball to their running backs. I think that the Rams would love to kind of get some of those sort of same kind of plays going in this game. And they can't really do it if Gurley's not healthy.
And on that point, guys, I'm of the mind that it generally doesn't matter who you put on them. I mean, we can mention the names of the linebackers as you did, Doug, and you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. It's a good matchup for the backs, but it's really going to be a matchup like that with any linebacker in the league. And even if you say, hey, put a safety on them instead, Gurley's so good, and we've seen this. Really think of it this way. Think of it from the James White perspective. Just because you put a safety on James White doesn't keep him from getting open. I think it's much the same way with Gurley. The answer isn't the who. The answer is what you do with him, and that's chipping. If you're going to let Todd Gurley free release on angles at the safety, at the linebacker, it really doesn't matter. I think this is a game where it's going to seem a little passé because the old 0-1 ring thing in the 0-1 season. A little bit like Marshall Faulk. Right. You got to beat him up. I mean, as good as the scheme may be drawn up for however the coverage is going to be, if he's got free release in space, Gurley is so good, he'll virtually beat anyone. So get those defensive ends involved, hammering him away as he gets out of the backfield.
Totally agree.
On the other side of the ball, the Rams Patriots' best defensive player is Aaron Donald, but they've got other guys on there too, and Ndamukong Suh is certainly no slouch there in the middle of the defensive line, Aqib Talib. But I do think that, I mean, it's happened all year. Aaron Donald pretty much needs to be doubled. So I don't know if it's going to be, David Andrews and Shaq Mason, David Andrews and Joe Thuney and Trent Brown, Mason and Marcus Cannon. But I would expect to see, two guys on him, especially in the passing game, on most snaps. So I think that that's obviously the most important player that you have to take away on the Rams defense.
I absolutely agree with that. And I think Joe Thuney is really going to be kind of the point man on that effort, because Aaron Donald, 20.5 sacks this season, 14.5 have come against left guards. A lot of those he was kind of single blocked on that play, and he was sort of easily able to get past that left guard. Joe Thuney's been, as Bill Belichick mentioned a couple months ago, in a kind of surprising way, he's been one of the Patriots' better players this season. He's played every single offensive snap. He's really stepped his game up each year throughout his career, been kind of a stalwart in that interior offensive line for 3 straight seasons. And it helps that he, David Andrews, Shaq Mason have played almost every game together over the last couple of years. The communication in that group is really strong, and it has to be when you're going against a duo like Donald and Ndamukong Suh down there.
It's one thing we build this up throughout the course of the season, folks, and you've been watching our show all year. We often talk about a guy who could potentially get into Tom's lap, who could potentially cause some disruption. Understand that for all the people that we built this up against, none of them are Aaron Donald, and you have to concede that, and you have to say that in some of those schemes, even a week ago would be a great example. Chris Jones, I mean, he's really one of the more disruptive inside guys that you could find. You'd have a hard time finding a guy other than Aaron Donald that does that particular thing better than him. Aaron Donald's different, and if the presumption is you can get away with the schemes you used before because it worked before, I think there's just too many examples on tape where Aaron Donald is taking really high-end guards that are good players, guards that are used to going week in, week out and winning their assignment and not getting it done. What makes Aaron Donald so unusual, and I'll say this sort of as a former player, when I watch film, and I watch a ton of it, and it was even when you were playing, there are certain guys in the NFL where you stop and you just watch him. And you find yourself 30 plays in and going, damn, I was supposed to take notes on everyone else. Right. Randy Moss was that way. As a player, you'd be on the other sideline, and I'm supposed to be doing my pregame warm-up, and I'm watching Randy. Like, what does Randy do? Randy Moss is just he grabs your attention. He's just so good at this sport. Aaron Donald is so good at this sport. What's unusual about him is that he's not huge. This isn't Mario Williams' body. It's not Sue's body. It's not even like a J.J. Watt body. He's a 280 guy, But yet he's short. He's
280.
Yeah, but it's the power that he plays with even at that size. And one of the things that you see often be a problem for guards is they'll really short set him because they're so used to him getting quicks and getting around the edges. And this little 6'2", 280 guy will power him right back into the quarterback. So the thing I want to see, and I think the way that you have to stop a guy like this, is you have to concede that he's better than you. And that's okay. Coach Belichick used to spend a lot of time on this in the rare occasions where you come up a guy that was just different. And Donald is just different. And what you don't want to do in situations like that is run away from them or end up with your back to them on pass plays, because that's when the strip sacks happen. That's when the punching out balls happen. You don't run away from people that are really good. You have to go right at them. I think not only doubling him, like when we're talking doubling pass pro, it's doubling and run stuff. And the thing in NFL run schemes with runs, you never double on the backside. That's sort of a wasted thing. You end up singles front side, and then there's a good chance they'll stop you. You double Aaron Donald, and you run right the hell at him. You put your 2 biggest people on him, and you try to move him backwards. He's too tough if you get him into pass pro, and he's too tough to single in a run play. So I think it's going to be fun to not run away from him. This is a Super Bowl. There's nowhere else to go nor to run. Double him, run right at him, try to put him in a linebacker level.
And obviously, given his size, he's not a big, space eater. He's not a big nose tackle. They don't really have that type of player on their defense. And one kind of advantage on the Patriots offense is that we talk about Aaron Donald's strength. He's obviously got the quickness as well. The Patriots interior offensive line is pretty athletic themselves. Yep. Joe Thuney and Shaq Mason, 2 of the most athletic guards in the NFL. David Andrews, pretty athletic himself there at center. And then, Marcus Cannon and Trent Brown, not quite as athletic, but certainly athletic for their size there at that position. So it seems like every Super Bowl there's one unsung hero who kind of breaks out in the game. So there's not a lot of, choices for that. My guy in this game to be the Deion Branch or the James White or whatever might be Philip Dorsett. He's caught touchdowns in the first 2 playoff games the Patriots have played.
Last 3 games he has a touchdown.
Last 3 games, he's really been a pretty dependable weapon there for Tom Brady. Hasn't been getting a ton of targets, but this could be a game where I actually see him break out a little bit and maybe have that kind of Danny Amendola game. Obviously, he plays a different position. He plays on the outside quite a bit, but I could see this being a big Philip Dorsett game just because of the trust that he has developed with Tom Brady over the course of the season.
I'm going to take a weird pick on this, and normally this would sound strange. I'm going to say Rob Gronkowski. I think a lot of people are actually kind of discounting how much of an effect he can have in this game, because over the last 2 weeks, obviously his regular season did not kind of meet up to his usual standards. He dealt with injuries. He wasn't particularly productive. He admitted that himself. But ever since the postseason began, first against the Chargers as a run blocker, and then last week against the Chiefs, or 2 weeks ago rather, as a pass catcher and a run blocker, he's looked much closer to Gronk level that we're used to seeing. And this Rams team has had trouble covering tight ends this season. They've allowed the third most passing yard or receiving yards to tight ends. They've been torched by George Kittle twice, torched by Travis Kelce once. Jared Cook had a big game against them. So I think, and I'm expecting this to be Rob Gronkowski's final game. Who knows if that's going to come to fruition or not, but I'm looking at this matchup, and I think he could have a big game in this game.
When we get to our final keys at the end, I'm going to double down on that point. I love why you're saying that. The history with other teams is certainly a part of it. I think there's another schematic reason why Wade Phillips may leave him exposed to let Gronk really go off. My unsung guy that could happen, may happen, who knows if it'll happen, I'm putting a lot of stock in the idea that Cordarrelle Patterson has really sat sort of in the freezer here for a few weeks, and I think it's a benefit to an offense when another team is studying you. And some teams, the Patriots being one of them, they'll roll back and look and find what happened 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, 11 weeks ago, and find those sort of hidden tapes to say, you know what, they might roll through with some of the stuff even though we haven't seen it. But every defense doesn't necessarily do that. A lot of them create their intercuts, the tendencies they have from the last month or so of work. And Cordarrelle Patterson has been a little bit quiet for these guys, and there's obviously a long Super Bowl history of that explosive player that sort of jumps out on the scene kind of guy. And man, Cordarrelle Patterson is, I get that he hasn't had the production of a Moss or something like that, but he is one of those electrifying guys where it's like, give it to Devin Hester, just see what he's going to do. Everyone stop what you're doing, put down your chips and dip, put down your beer for just a second and see what Cordarrelle might do. Maybe he'll fumble, but he might hit his head on the goalpost as well. And I think this is really a game that sets up nice for that, from the fact that they haven't had a lot of it. The jet motion stuff has been effective for them, but mildly used. Just one 16-yard carry for him a week ago. I could really see this being a game where you screw with him in the opening sequence of plays and do a lot of that stuff. Get a lot of the sideways movement with Cordarrelle, really screw up the exchange and sort of the motions that they have to do on the other side. Put them on their heels after the first few series. Make them rethink where they are. Cordarrelle going for 80 on some crazy play, or Tom hitting him up the seam like he did in Miami, would not be a surprise. And if he were to get an explosive play in special teams, as a former Patriots special teams player, it's the talk. I've talked about this with Matthew Slater, talked about some of the old school guys that are more on my era. Amazingly, although we've had 8 of these, the Patriots, as stalwart of a group of special teams players they've had over the years, there has not been an explosive play, guys. It's pretty hard to imagine. A lot of them that got you into the Super Bowls, but never one in. The longest kick return, there was a Lawrence Maroney 41 or 42-yarder. Good return, but not a game breaker. There's been 2 20-yard punt returns, one by one by Troy early on, and one by Jules just a couple seasons ago. But you haven't had a game breaker in the punt return, haven't had a game breaker in the kick return. It's something all special teams guys are looking for, and I think this game sets up really nice for Cordarrelle to have one of those.
And Cordarrelle Patterson also has 2 weeks to recover from the knee injury that he suffered late in the season, and I think to some degree that probably was why he was a little bit limited production-wise in the first 2 postseason games for the Patriots. But he's a guy who can definitely do a lot, like you said, on special teams, through the air, running the ball. We could even see him getting some carries out of the backfield. I know they haven't done that much since Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead came back, but it could be a little wrinkle to throw in a game where the Rams might not be expecting that with all the other running backs healthy.
Here's why that would work, Doug, because if you walk out of the huddle defensively, you count the wide receivers and backs. And you're counting on, when Cordarrelle's in there, of counting him as a wide receiver.
Right.
So his match that he would draw would be another defensive back, maybe a safety. But if you screw with him and put him in the backfield with another one of your backs, it messes the count up. It makes a linebacker potentially have to account for him. Yeah. He motions out, you might catch him with a linebacker. He stays in the backfield, you motion one of your backs out, that absorbs a linebacker, and you leave him soloed on something you really want him to be soloed on. So it's a real way to screw with something. I'm not suggesting here you go wire to wire, guys. It's never a nice idea, but it's something where you could really blow up a game plan for a few drives by showing something they're not expecting.
Yeah, expect the unexpected in Patriots Super Bowls, which we've come to learn over the years. I mean, they've had a wide receiver pass in each of the last 2 Super Bowls, going all the way back. You get the touchdown passes to Mike Vrabel. They even tried to run a halfback pass back in 01 that kind of got blown up the line. But in basically every Super Bowl, they'll Josh McDaniels or whoever happens to be the Patriots coordinator reaches into that bag of tricks and pulls out something. And I would be very surprised if we don't see some sort of gadget play out here today.
There was a throw to a quarterback last year that we don't want to. I don't suspect that that's going to happen this year, guys.
Their last 2 years hasn't really worked out from them in the trick play department.
That's the one play they might want to put to bed.
Cordell Patterson has been kind of stumping to throw the ball too, so maybe we actually see that happen.
He's got a pretty good arm.
Attempt a field goal.
Slash out there, like Cordell Stewart. So a lot of people have talked about kind of the old guard versus the new guard in this game with Bill Belichick versus Sean McVay. But another important matchup in this game is also sort of old guard and new guard, and that's Wade Phillips and Josh McDaniels. So I think that this is a very interesting matchup, especially given Wade Phillips' success against the Patriots in the postseason. We saw it in 2015 in the AFC Championship game. I have stayed away from those comparisons, though, all season, the 2015 AFC Championship game between the Patriots and Broncos, just because the Patriots were so banged up in that game. Yep. Offensive line was a mess. Steven Jackson was their top running back in that game. This Patriots team, on the other hand, it might be the most healthy Patriots team that's ever made a Super Bowl. Really, the only presumptive starter on injured reserve is rookie linebacker Juwan Bentley. Beyond that, you've got guys like Eric Rowe, Brian Schwanke. So they really only lost one starter during the course of the season. So that's why I stay away from those comparisons, but Wade Phillips has been around long enough to maybe know how to match Josh McDaniels out there.
So what Wade could be tempted to do, he's generally a heavy zone guy, and I've kind of harped on this and made fun of this throughout the year. It's never so simple as man versus zone,
right.
But the kind of stuff that they may be willing to do, I mean, oftentimes we have on this show conversations about who may cover who, not for every play, but for lots of the plays kind of thing. And the one unique element here is obviously a keep to leave. And one thing I would remind folks at home, if they make the decision to use their biggest defensive back, Talib's probably the biggest defensive back in the league, other than maybe Richard Sherman or something like that, but he's big, he's tall, he's long. That makes him unique. Big and tall and long doesn't really help you with any matchup with their actual receivers, so there might be the temptation to throw him on Gronk occasionally. But then why I say that is it's not throw him on Gronk and necessarily cover him wire to wire. You can still stay in the zone defenses that Wade wants to run. It's just simply putting him over him, right. Put him in the nearest zone to Gronk. Yeah. So one of the things to maybe keep an eye on is how much can the Patriots pre-snap movement, because they love the motion guys, they love to stack receivers, they love to do little trip stuff. That can get you out of the things you'd prefer to do. You may have a game plan. It's like the old Mike Tyson thing. He's like, anyone can, they can talk. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched on the nose. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the thing. You think you want to do this, but it may not match to what the Patriots are going to want to do.
Yeah, Bill Belichick said earlier this week.
I'm that quote, by the way.
It's all right. We'll roll with it. I think everybody got
it was like Chris Farley, like the T-bone steak sauce or whatever. Sorry about that.
So Bill Belichick said, I believe it was last week when he was asked about Wade Phillips, he said basically he does what he does. He's been coaching in this league forever, for close to 40 years or over 40 years now. He doesn't really deviate. He's not much of a game plan coach. He has a system and he runs a system. And you've kind of seen that with how they've deployed their cornerbacks this season. Aqib Talib on the left-hand side of this formation, outside, something like 93% of the time.
Exactly.
It's almost always Marcus Peters over there on the right. They don't really move around. They basically stay there. And then it's usually Nickel Roby Coleman, who obviously had his Tom Brady comments that got him in the news this week.
Good luck.
Who's in the slot. And against defenses like that, theoretically, that should be a defense that the Patriots can kind of exploit with matchups, because you can get your best wide receiver, Julian Edelman, on the opposing team's third cornerback, basically, on basically every single snap if you want to. I know Roby Coleman, some of the advanced metrics say he's been one of the better slot corners in the league this year, but I still think that's a mismatch in favor of the Patriots. So do the Rams and do Wade Phillips kind of throw some unexpected wrinkles at the Patriots in this game, or do they try to just say, this is our system, we're going to run our system? I'm very interested to see how that defense comes out in the first couple drives.
I want to make this point, folks, because every time we have conversations about coordinators matching ourselves, I do it, we all do it, we start talking about coverage, and we don't talk about the fronts and stuff. And one of the unique things about the Rams that really showed up heavily a week ago against the Saints, and I think this is actually relevant, the Saints, there's enough carryover there to what you would do against them, you may do against the Patriots, especially if they end up under center more. But why I talk about the core and what Wade may do, they were flopping pre-snap. If you watch back that Saints-Rams game, before the snap of every ball, before Drew's getting under center or lifting his leg in there to get things going on, they're flopping. Aaron Donald, Brockers, Sue, they're all bouncing around. So they had a preference on which side they'd want to put Donald. In part, that's to draw the matchups. They think you're going to double him with a certain guy, we'll hide him somewhere else. The one guy that's the little different person there is Fowler. He's a smaller body. Brockers is a big end. Fowler's the small end. So if you want to get into situations where you know the guy you want to run against, and they're moving around quickly, we know how good Tom Brady is at saying, screw you, I'm just going to snap the ball and we're going to go. There's a lot of cheap plays to be had against the Rams, and I wonder if they dare do that, because the Patriots will go on quick, and they'll also align with a fullback and a tight end, and you can't get caught doing that stuff. So keeping a real eye on that, and keep an eye on if they're really just trying to place Donald at a place they think will be preferable, well then screw it. While you're moving around, we're going to snap the ball and run to the end zone.
Let's get into our keys of the game, and actually let's start with the offensive keys, and that leads me into my point. In this game, I think they need to treat it similarly to how they did against the Chargers and Chiefs. Just come out running the ball early, whether you take the ball after the coin toss or not. And this Rams defense has a big front in Aaron Donald and Dominican Sue and Michael Brockers, but they don't have a traditional nose tackle up there. And the rest of their front seven defenders are pretty small. I mean, their linebackers are right around like 220, 230. Their edge guys are around 250. It's not a big group out there. So I think that you can find, James Devlin or Dwayne Allen or Rob Gronkowski kind of pushing those guys around a little bit. And you might not be able to do that with Sue and Brockers and Donald, but once you get to that second level or once you get to the edge, I think that you can find some success there in the run game, especially if you can come out pounding it early and really trying to get the run game going and string runs together, because that could kind of wear down that defense just to start the game.
Yeah, Patriots have had a ton of success running out of heavy personnel recently, especially 21 personnel. James Devlin has been fantastic throughout these playoffs. They're really the O-line, James Devlin, Rob Gronkowski, Dwayne Allen. They've all just kind of formed this unit that's really made things pretty easy for Sony Michel and the rest of their running backs. On a lot of those plays, he's really getting 2-3 yards down the field before anybody even touches him. So that's definitely going to be a key to this game. I think overall it's just don't let Aaron Donald wreck your entire afternoon in this game. He's a player who's going to make plays regardless. He's talented enough that you're not going to keep him away from the ball for the entire game. And I do agree that their better strategy in the run game sometimes is going to be just to run directly at him with double teams and even triple teams sometimes. But we've all seen in the past, it's kind of a cliche that the way to get Tom Brady kind of off of his game is to pressure him up the middle. Rams are a team that has the ability to do that, so making sure that kind of doesn't play out on the field is, I think, is going to be a big key in this one.
So one of the things that I always like to do this in times where we've had really an 18-game conversation with you folks, this now being the 19th, some of these themes tend to carry over, and it's not all necessarily about the Rams. You get to learn a lot about a team. The Patriots are here for a reason. They're awful good now. We know at moments during the season they weren't, and I think if you're sort of doing an honest reflection on your group and saying, okay, we've gotten to the pinnacle here, how do we get over this last step? It generally has to be not doing the things that have been their speed bumps. And for them, it's been operation errors, turnovers, untimely plays, non-performance in situational football. And you look to the Super Bowl, and you looked at really some of the close games they've had in the last few Super Bowls. They've handicapped themselves, unfortunately, in the big game a handful of times. 28-3 didn't happen by accident. There was a pick six and there was a fumble, right? There was a way that you got to that spot. A year ago, it wasn't so much about turnovers. It was just no stops defensively. But I think if you look at this year's team and you look at the moments they've struggled, it's really been that. The Steelers game is a shining beacon of just how not to do it. When this team controls tempo, when it controls, where they're at on 2nd and 5 instead of 2nd 15 because someone held someone or someone jumped off sides, that's the difference for this team. They're clean on operations. They win the turnover differential very convincingly. They're the best team in football. I really do believe that. The hard part for them has been consistently putting that kind of effort week after week. The last 2 weeks have been sterling to an extent. There were still 2 turnovers. They still turned the ball over twice on the road against the Chiefs, yet we're able to come away with a victory. This isn't the kind of game that I believe they can go in and throw 2 picks. I really don't think you can count on that and overcoming that. The Rams are just too good. So clean operations, clean on the turnover differential part, and we haven't seen the Patriots get one off them. It'd be kind of nice to get a couple there. Goff will hang on to the ball more or less, but a fumble, getting it out and protecting yourself couldn't be a bigger key than that.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the ball, defensive keys, that leads me into my point. Another good segue here is that Patriots need to force mistakes out of Jared Goff. Jared Goff has not been the same quarterback since Cooper Kupp went down with his torn ACL in Week 10. They've got Josh Reynolds filling in as that third receiver. Robert Woods is now kind of slid into that slot role out there. And I think that you can force mistakes out of them. The Patriots have played more man defense than any other defense in the NFL this season. They're really into shadowing guys with Stephon Gilmore. So all week we've been talking about, okay, is Gilmore going to be on Cooks? Is Gilmore going to be on Robert Woods? There was a picture that leaked out on Patriots.com of Stephon Gilmore covering a guy in a number 17 penny, and that's Robert Woods. And I mean, one thing here that's kind of interesting is that Gilmore does have some history with both of these guys. Obviously, he was a teammate of Brandon Cooks last year with the Patriots, but he played for 4 years with Robert Woods in Buffalo, so he knows both of those guys really well. I would definitely expect him to be on one of them. Woods is probably the more obvious matchup, but Gilmore hasn't slid into the slot that often this season, so maybe it's not a pure shadow that they go with here, but I do think the Patriots definitely need to trust their cornerbacks in this game, kind of load up against the run, and definitely trust Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, and Jason McCourty out there.
Yeah, my key defensively goes back to what we were talking about earlier about stopping Todd Gurley and not letting him kind of be the offensive superstar in this game. So I'll touch one more stat on the point that you just brought up. It'll be interesting if we see J.C. Jackson on Brandon Cooks. If it is Gilmore on Robert Woods, we see Jackson on Cooks. Jackson has been pretty grabby in recent weeks. He got away with it for most of the season. He's a very physical corner. He was called for a lot of penalties early in his career, was good for a couple weeks, and then was called for 3 more last week. Brandon Cooks, as we all know from watching him last year, is one of the best players in the league at drawing pass interference penalties down the field. So I think that could be a matchup that the Rams could try to exploit if that's how the Patriots play it out. So that'll be definitely be something to watch.
So defensive key for me, guys, is this doesn't happen a lot, and we kind of go week to week and we kind of do these things, and each week it's a little different than what we talked about the week before. As I was going through my notes for the week, I was noticing how a lot of the stuff I was saying was getting to be repetitive from things I said in the Chiefs game. Yeah. And the Chiefs game has a little bit similar feel into the, they got a lot of dangerous weapons, just like the Rams got a lot of dangerous weapons. And I think the disruption element, rather than the who takes who stuff, more just make sure that in the event that someone's going to be disrupting a route, that he's covered up. If J.C. Jackson is going to be able to go aggressive, he's not going to get slipped and find Brandon Cooks going 80 yards behind him. The fact that the front needs to get involved with the disruption, in other words, hitting backs, hitting near tight ends. We don't talk a lot about Everett or what's the other guy's name?
Higbee.
Mildly used, but at times these guys can be higher targets.
Put them together and they're kind of a number one-ish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They like their tight end, but they never lean too heavily on one or the other. But I do think the theme carries over more so than anything. It's not about a guy, it's about a theme. Disrupting a time in offense, and this is much like that with the Chiefs. You don't get as much movement necessarily out of the quarterback, but Goff showed against the Saints he can run for the occasional first down if need be. But it's disrupting early. It's using the chuck zone, taking advantage of that, and making sure that they're just not streaking down the field. There's no Tyreek Hill, but Woods can run. Obviously, we know Cooks can run. And Gurley up a seam, he can run. Everyone needs to be hit.
With Jared Goff, one game just sticks in my mind. We were on the road, I think, in 2015, 2016, whenever he was drafted. And it was a college game where it was Cal and Utah. He threw 5 interceptions in that game. So there are ways to kind of get him to make those mistakes. Not saying he's going to throw 5 interceptions in this game. No. Not saying that Utah is the New England Patriots, but there are ways to make those games happen out of Jared Goff. Let's get into Chatham's choice. The latest lines that we saw on Skybook were the Patriots were favored by 2 points, and it was a over-under of, what was it, 56?
56 and a half. We've seen it kind of all over the board. So how about this? Let's do a little unique this week, folks. We got to give you a pick, which we always do, but what's unique to this week is the props.
Love the
props.
We
want to hit you hard on the props at the end. Doug, are you thinking this is more of a spread week or points? Where are you sitting?
I mean, I would take the Patriots by 2. If the line is 2, if you can find 2, if you go on Skybook.com or
go there now.
Skybook, go right now and get that 2, because I do think the Patriots are going to win this game. And what it comes down to, for me, just to simplify it as much as possible, is that I believe the Kansas City Chiefs are better than the Los Angeles Rams. Patriots went to Kansas City on the road, hostile environment, and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Right. This is a neutral field. It's going to be filled to the brim with Patriots fans.
Yeah, that's going to be the fun part.
No offense to Rams fans, but you guys don't really exist out there.
So it's going to. I haven't seen many this week.
It's going to feel like a home game. And as we've been out here today, there have been some fans out here. I think I saw one Marshall Faulk jersey from when he was with the Rams. All of the other ones have been Patriots jerseys. So if you can get the Patriots by 2 in this game, then I take that.
I'd take Patriots by 2, Patriots by 2.5, Patriots by 3. Yeah. I think this is going to be a close-ish game as every Patriots Super Bowl kind of is. Yeah. But I've got the same sentiment that we had going in last week to Kansas City. I thought the Patriots would win that game by 4 to 5 points. I'm seeing kind of the same range for this game, so I'm taking the Patriots.
Yeah. So folks, we've done this each week. If I really felt I was steering the wrong way with the points thing, or with the spread thing, I'd send you to the points. This is a week where the point total worries me a little bit. When you start talking, the Patriots have had sort of an up and down. They've had some monster games, but sometimes when they go head-to-head with a team like this, well, they want to slow the game. And if both teams want to slow the game because they're scared of one another, all of a sudden you end up with like a 28-24. And 28-24 is going to make you lose money today. And we don't want to do that. So it's also a game that it could be like Philly a year ago or even the Chiefs last week, and you blow up and you're into the 60s and 70s. So since it's such of a coin flip for me on game style, I'm sending it right to where these guys went. I think that 2.5 is something to jump all over. Take it at 2, take it at 2.5, take it even at 3. I would be safe even up to 4.5. I think 5's the number you'd stay away and go play the points instead. But I feel pretty comfortable the Patriots sit in a nice spot today. It will be a less than 1 score kind of game, but over the field goal, yeah, you're safe. You're going to win on that this week. But here's where we really wanted to get you different, and we wanted to dive into the props a little bit, folks. And these are plays I'm going to play as well, so you can take them, know that I'm taking them. There's a litany of these things. There's a plethora of different choices you could take, and some of them are sucker bets. Some of them I do not believe are. I'm going to go in here personally, and you guys can follow me on the graphic on your screen. New England to score in every quarter. I go yes with that. Looking at recent history, looking at the game they've been best. May not be a 7, maybe some field goals, but they're a clock-controlled team that generally ends their drive with something because of play style. I believe that's a safe bet. Yes, on the Patriots to score in every quarter. Total punts, I'm going under on 7.5. Now, that was going back to like a 4-week review on both Hecker and Allen. Also trying to find these games where it's two big-time offenses versus one another. Yep. The idea of getting 4 punts out of both of those guys in that game style almost never happens. One of them may have 4 punts. The other guy's going to have 2 or 3. One of them more likely is going to have just 2. So this is a game with a 7.5 punts thing. I think you're a safe under there. Total field goals. Going over 3.5. That means
great kickers.
2 great kickers and 2 guys that both teams are comfortable in ending a drive, even with an over 45 kick. I think that helps you to get over the 3.5. You just need to have both of the kickers kick 2 balls and make them. And I think that's a pretty safe bet there. GURLEY, and I'm going to do a pro Rams bet here. They're not all this way, but I'm going to go an over on the 32.5 receiving yards for Todd Gurley. I think he does get back.
2 catches. Yeah,
I think he gets back on track, and I think much like a week ago with the Williams thing, all it takes is one broken play that you regret that you have, and you hit on that number. So I think Gurley gets back on track as a receiver. Hopefully doesn't ruin the game, but ends over the 32.5 receiving yards. Brady, over 282 yards of passing. Here's my philosophy on that is you're going to have to go really far back into Patriots history, more than 10 to 15 years to get to the game style where Tom's not going to throw it over 250 yards. This is a 280 number. In the moments where it gets tight, they go spread. The yards kind of come. Therein lies the waterfall. I think Tom Brady at over 282 was a very safe prop this week. Gronk over 3.5 catches. Just need that 4th ball, guys. And both of you guys both hammered on that. The reason I think the Gronk over 3.5 hits this week is because Edelman has been killing everyone. Right. And I think Wade Phillips is going to do something to try to account for that. When you try to give a little extra attention to the inside receiver running crossing routes, the tight end opens up. 4-ball week or more for Gronk. And finally, James White at over 45.5 receiving yards, folks.
This one's ridiculous.
It's almost like the bunny that you're like, what do y'all know that we don't know? Because that feels like a layup. And you ever go down a prop sheet in these Super Bowls, there's 100 bets. There's one that you can really circle and find and say, everyone should be on that. Everyone should be on White over 45.5 yards. That is all for me, folks. I saw Rob Ryan today. Yeah, we all got to see Robbo, my old position coach. That's a great sign.
Great suit jacket.
Maybe Patriots by 100. I'll have to change that bet, but go ahead, Doug.
Certainly keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow Zach on Twitter at ZachHawksNESN. Follow Matt on Twitter at Chatham58. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kide. And thanks for tuning in to the NESN pregame chat presented by Skybook.